Hi, folks. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Samantha, and I am pleased to be your host for today's architectural science session as part of Ryerson's March virtual open house, which is taking place from March 15th to the 20th and 22nd to the 26th. There are many sessions taking place across these 2 weeks, so we encourage you to visit our website and register for any sessions that may interest you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Here at Ryerson, we are a diverse community providing a space that is welcoming and open to everyone. Now, to start, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land. Ryerson and Toronto are in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Would also like to go through a few Zoom housekeeping tips before we got started. Now, we are mindful of security concerns while using this platform. So if there are any major disruptions that interrupts the host's ability to keep control of the Zoom platform, we will be asking everyone to log off. We encourage respectful dialogue in the chat function of Zoom at all times, and we absolutely encourage you to ask as many questions as you'd like all throughout the session. Now, behind the scenes, we have an amazing group of faculty members, staff members, admissions and recruitment officers, program experts, as well as current students in the program. So feel free to ask your questions all throughout today's session. To ask a question, use the Q&A pod at the bottom of your Zoom window. So click on that Q&A button to open the dialog window and type your questions throughout the session. They'll either be answered behind the scenes during the session, or we might answer it live when we do some live Q&A at the end of the session. If you're having any audio or video issues, feel free to flag it in the Q&A pod and one of our staff members will assist you. You may rearrange your screen in any way that suits you best, and note that rearranging your screen does not impact the way that others are viewing this presentation. Now, this session will be closed captioned, so if you'd like to turn this feature on, all you have to do is click the live transcript available button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and you're also able to move the text box in any way around the screen that best suits you. Now, I'd next like to address some of the common questions that we're getting from students right now, and hopefully this information will be helpful to you. First question, when will I hear a decision? So Ryerson releases decisions on a continuous rolling basis. We do continue to review applications on an ongoing basis, so be sure to continue checking in with your Choose Ryerson portal page for all updates to your application. If you've received an offer, when is the deadline to accept and how do you accept your offer? So the deadline to accept your offer is indicated in your offer letter. For Ontario high school students, students are normally required to accept their offer before June 8th, and you can do so through your OUAC account. Will classes be in person or online for the coming fall semester? So the impact of COVID-19 is ongoing, and the university's priority remains the health and safety of our community. Looking towards the 2021-2022 academic cycle, the university is actively planning through its opportunities working group, as well as a scenario planning working group, to assess, plan, and execute possible future scenarios, including post-pandemic recovery. And we will continue to provide updates to our community through our COVID-19 website, which is ryerson.ca/COVID-19. Ryerson is currently operating on an essential services model until further notice. And for those of you who might see a non-applicable message in your Choose Ryerson portal for your 101 transcripts, if you do see this non-applicable message for your high school in the Choose Ryerson portal page, please note that Ontario high school students are not required to submit transcripts through the portal. We will receive your grades through the OUAC. We'd like to know who is joining us, so please take a moment to answer this poll that I'm about to launch right now. So who is joining us today? Are you a current applicant for fall of 2021? Perhaps you're a prospective student applying in the future. Maybe you're a university or college transfer student. Perhaps you are a parent, a guardian, or a supporter of a student, or maybe you are a teacher or a counselor. So I'm going to leave this open for a couple more seconds as the answers start to filter through. And I think I'm going to share the results right now. So it looks like we have a pretty healthy split of folks joining us. We've got a number of current applicants for fall of 2021 who we hope to be able to welcome into the Ryerson family. We also have some prospective students who might be looking to apply to architectural science in the future, as well as a group of individuals who are university or college transfer students and some parents and guardians. So no matter who you are, no matter what your current status is, we welcome you to today's presentation and we hope you learn a lot about architectural science, but feel free to ask as many questions as you'd like. That is a lot of talking on my end. So without any further ado, I'd love to introduce Vince from the architectural science program here at Ryerson. So take away, Vince.
Hi, everyone. So you thought that was a lot of talking. I got some more talking to present to all of you folks. So thank you again for taking the time out this evening to listen to us talk about architectural science. And just jumping right into this, architectural science at Ryerson is one of the more popular programs. As you probably have done your research, you've seen that we have a lot of applicants and there's only a select few that actually do manage to get in and be part of it. And of course, many of you guys have already seen on various social media handles that there is a great deal of information available through the Why Ryerson handle. Now, I can go and talk about a lot of things about Ryerson and just how great it is, but I know that most of you guys are just here listening for why architectural science, right? So in this case, I'm going to tell you folks about the top 10 reasons why Ryerson Architectural Science would be a good fit for you. So starting off with point number 10, we're accredited, which is a huge testament because I think that most of you folks have done your homework and seen what various institutions offer for their architecture degrees. And I think the most important thing is to take note that we offer an architectural degree, in this case, the Bachelor of Architectural Science. And as you can see right here, we at the top offer a 4-year undergrad. And then of course, once you've got a 4-year undergrad, you can subsequently take a 2-year master's. Whereas other institutions, they might not necessarily offer a similar degree, and they might have you do a master's that's about 3.5 to 4 years long. That of course is really important because you got to keep in mind that once you complete your undergraduate degree in architecture or architectural science, you don't necessarily have the ability to call yourself an architect. So just to put the big picture in front of you, you have to have 3 things. You have to have education, which is right here at the beginning. That's basically capped off with a master's degree in architecture. Again, with Ryerson Architectural Science, you do 4-year undergrad plus 2-year master's, 6 years for your education. But the next component is, of course, experience. So you may have seen shows like Grey's Anatomy or other lawyer shows where you have people having to do internships or articling. Well, the same thing goes for the profession of architecture. So a lot of our students that want to be architects, they have to undertake about 3,720 hours of appropriate work experience to get that intern capacity under their belt, that experience. And the third E is examination. In this case, in Canada, they're the EXAC exams, and in America, they're the NCARBs. You get the education, you get the experience, you get the examination, and voila, you can officially call yourself an architect. But the reason why this is really important is because right now, you are at the very far left here, where we're talking about your undergraduate degree. And it's probably imperative that you get an undergraduate degree with architecture, or at least in this case, it's a Bachelor's of Architectural Science. So I think you really got to take a moment, and I gather most of you already have taken a look at what our program has to offer. But those of you guys that might need a little bit of a refresher, if you take a look at our program, there's a whole bunch of reasons why our program is unique. And quite frankly, I think everyone on this panel will be able to tell you why it's so good. But I'd like to put it this way. If you take a look at our 4-year undergraduate program, the first 3 years are common. Okay, basically everyone in the first 3 years takes the same courses. Yes, you have a few electives here and there, but at the end of the day, the core curriculum is the same. However, one thing that really serves as a differentiator in our program is the fact that our students can then in 4th year take architecture, project management, building science, or a general concentration. So what other programs do in 4 years, we do in 3 years, such that when you get into 4th year, you have the ability to focus and concentrate in a specific direction, okay? So that's the basic issues of point number 10, which is that we are accredited. Which brings me to point number 9. We actually start designing from day one. So can you imagine the homework that an architecture student would probably embark on is obviously going to be looking at structures, looking at, say, history, but the big homework is going to be, of course, designing things. Well, what better place than a course called Studio, where you are able to take the knowledge in structures, in site planning, in, say, materials. All of those courses come into play in the direct application in the design studio. And this is a sample of even first-year studio where students are making physical models, doing drawings, and able to quickly apply their knowledge from a variety of courses into a design project. And that's not just simply doing it with drawings and physical models, but of course we have the ability, and again, this is another first-year project, to take those ideas straight into the computer and have a great deal of skill built up even as early as first year. This is a sample of a project after about 3 months of a student in our first year program and what they're able to articulate using a combination of hand drawing as well as digital modeling and rendering skills. And of course, that's really good because it helps students develop those skills throughout third year, where they're not only just making great design work, but they're also able to, as you can see here, develop a strong sense of what goes into the building science, into the structures, basically all the details that are critical to make this building happen. And of course, it's also going to allow, this curriculum is going to also allow students to not only design and then detail, but also figure out all the components that are required to make this building happen to essentially allow it to be delivered properly on time and on budget. So with that said, that brings me to point number 8, because if our students have that really good knowledge of design, detail, and delivery of projects, well, guess what? That makes them really useful and very attractive to employers in the industry, which brings me to point number 8, which is co-op. Now, I know a lot of programs that you might have been looking up have co-ops, and they're great programs. However, I'd like to think that our program is very unique in its co-op system, and I am biased because I oversee it as well. But what we're going to talk about is we know that architecture doesn't have a gestation period, or it doesn't come about really fast, right? We know that if I had a building design, it's going to probably take a while to get everything from the drawings done, to get it compliant with codes, and also, of course, to construct it. So in our co-op program, it's not like journalism where you might write an article and it might show up on the internet tomorrow or tonight. Architecture takes a little bit of time. So what we have is 4 4-month work terms right after each other, right? So once you finish the 3 common years where you've really been able to execute on that design, detail, and delivery knowledge, right? Now you are skilled at the point where you can actually take on a co-op opportunity and work for an employer for 16 months straight. And that really is powerful because it allows a student to see the start of a project all the way through to potentially even the completion in some cases. And I'll show you a little bit of an example on that. But it's really imperative that architects see the work at all different phases. And that concentration of our co-op program in that 1 year of co-op is really important. I should also mention that co-op is optional. You don't have to do co-op, okay? Our co-op is competitive. So essentially, if after the first 3 years, you are among the top students in terms of grade point average, and if the employers find that you have a great portfolio of work, congratulations, you are able to go into the co-op program, and it only adds 1 more year to your entire architectural education, okay? And then once you finish your co-op, you then come back for 4th year. So very quickly, I know a lot of people are asking, well, what kind of opportunities are available? Well, within our co-op program, it's not just simply working in office. We make sure that every single one of the co-op opportunities are paid co-op positions. And we have students working everywhere from in Denmark with BIG, and in New York with BIG and Morphosis. These are big, I hate using that term all the time, but it's a large brand name architecture firms that you might know, you might be familiar with. And at the same time, in the Canadian landscape, we have students working with Partisans. They just won the 2020 Emerging Architect in Canada Award. And we also have one of the largest architecture firms in Canada, Diamond Schmidt Architects, hiring from our student population. So let's take a look at what they've done, because we know that from the ability to design from day one in our program, the students can quickly design and represent their ideas, but also start finessing all of the details and making sure everything from cost to scheduling, all that is done within the kind of work that you see here. Because quite frankly, Our co-op program is successful because we are at the heart or the hub of architecture in the country, which brings me to point number 7. Ryerson is in the hub of architecture in Canada. I mean, let's be honest here. Why would you study architecture where there's no architecture? So in this case, we are at the center of the country's architectural community. And more importantly, not only are you going to be able to see great architectural works around the campus and throughout the city, right? But you're also going to be able to work and play in the city and also get exposure to some of the great architectural work, not only in the complete state, but also get a chance to go with some of your faculty members on field trips to see behind the scenes. So this is a suite of images. On the top left-hand corner, you can see my students and I, we went to a construction site of a relatively interesting digitally fabricated restaurant. And in the other images, you can see we've had tours to see the construction process of various things from adaptive reuse heritage buildings all the way through to, like, say, for example, the Raptors practice facility. Again, that is a testament to being in Toronto. So instead of just simply looking at pictures of something and showing slides of that in like a concrete detail in a book, guess what? I can take my students, I can call up some of my friends in the industry, and within a couple of weeks, I can get all the clearances to bring my students to actually see what construction with concrete really is like, right? And it's not just simply to be isolated in Toronto. I know that a lot of folks here are probably thinking, well, great, Ryerson's in Toronto, but what about the rest of the world? Well, guess what? We have access to that too. And I know some other programs might say, we got Paris, we got Rome, we got, I don't know, Beijing. Well, guess what? We got all those places and more. We got the whole world at our disposal. And on top of that, we've also got great opportunities for our students to engage the global praxis of architecture. Whether it's giving papers at conferences, we had students prior to the pandemic, we had students giving papers in Hawaii, in Spain, in Hong Kong, in Australia. I didn't mark it off here, but we have people giving paper and researching on work around the world. We also, of course, have students working in co-op in different countries around the world. And more importantly, we've also got studios and travel opportunities. For example, I taught a studio in the past in San Francisco and in Las Vegas. I also had the opportunity to take some of my students out to Europe. I brought them to Munich, to Venice, to basically in Milan. So basically all these great cities in the world to actually see the architecture and get that real experience, right? So it's not just looking at a photo, but actually really becoming enveloped in that environment. And that brings me to another opportunity, which is within that mobility of our students, we also have access to a great exchange network, okay? So when we talk about exchanges, that's basically a system where we have some of our students go and go and take their studies in, say, France, for example, in Paris. And we would also get some students from France to come over, and thereby we are exchanging students. So exchange or study abroad opportunities often come in 4th year, okay? So what better way to cap your architectural education than to not only have a great education built at Ryerson where you learn about design, detail, and delivery of projects, but over here you can see, here are some images of a university called TU Delft in the Netherlands. It's ranked one of the #1 schools in the world in architecture. And guess what? We've got formal exchanges where some of their students can come over here and some of our students can go over there and study. So what a great way to finish off your undergrad by saying, hey, look, I was actually studying among the great students, the great architecture, and the great faculty at that particular institution. But that's not to say that our faculty aren't necessarily anything to shy away from, which brings me to point number 5. Our faculty has a great distinction of falling into one of 2 categories. Either you're going to be a great leading edge researcher bringing in the guidelines for the future of architectural practice in the future, or we have some of my colleagues, they're running architecture firms, they're winning great best architect in Canada awards, right? And guess what? They're bringing the real world into the classroom. So let's take a look at that. So whether it's having, say, for example, a history or theory course dispensed with, I know his name is Marco Polo, so believe it or not, that's actually his real name. You can look it up on the website. But having Marco Polo one of the biggest names in Canadian architecture. Why? Because guess what? He used to be the editor of Canadian Architect magazine. On top of that, Marco Polo also represented Canada at the Venice Biennale. The Venice Biennale, for those of you guys that are not familiar, is basically the equivalent of the Olympics for architecture, right? So again, having that kind of weight is incredible. Not to mention, of course, some of our other faculty members like Russell Richmond, one of the best people for envelope systems, or even our part-time faculty members like Christian Liu, just won the Allied Arts Medal a couple of years ago for the RAIC. And on top of that, can you imagine taking a course in, say, acoustics and it having been taught by an engineer, Professor Ramani Ramakrishnan, who is single-handedly the engineer that's responsible for making sure that at NASA, when a shuttle is launched, guess what? You don't want to have that sonic boom blowing out all the windows. Well, guess what? You're going to get taught acoustics by a guy of that caliber. And that's the kind of nature that we operate with. And even here, this is some of the work that I did with some of my students, where we actually used gaming engines to actually work with archaeologists to digitally recreate a virtual walkthrough of an entire Indigenous settlement. And what's even better about this was that Indigenous settlement, we had to create a facility over here to actually house this in a museum, this virtual reality enclosure. And again, that's a testament to the ability for our students to actually build stuff and to actually take it on for extracurricular work as well. Which brings me to point number 4. Not only do we teach students how to design, detail, and deliver projects, but we also ensure that they are mobilized so that they can take it on their own. These are projects right here, 2 projects that our students have taken on their own initiative. These are extracurricular projects that the students have done. In the top, you see a small installation out on the beaches of Toronto during the winter, okay? And you can see that they made a physical model and they were able to take that idea and make it into reality. We also have, at that point in time, we have the largest 3D printed art piece in Canada. This is at the Batashoe Museum, and of course, you can take a look at it still now on Bloor Street. At the Batashoe Museum, this is an installation where we 3D printed all of the flowers of each province and territory out of little 3D printed shoes, okay? So again, it's our students' ability to take their knowledge from our program to not only design and detail and deliver and construct these great pieces of art, and I would argue, we say it's a great cultural artifact within Toronto. But on top of that, our students are able to take that knowledge and really impart it on entering competitions, right? So we have students that are winning competitions. This happens to be a student, we won the ACSA. That's basically an organization that embodies all of the architecture programs across the world, right? We've been able to successfully have for the last 3 years, students either win it or place in it for the last 3 years, which is remarkable. Again, I'd like to think that that's a testament to the quality of our students. But obviously, these students aren't just learning on their own, they're learning in tandem with others, which brings me to point number 3, which is our facilities. Look at this. This is the environment, barring the pandemic. This is the facility that you'd be working in. This is studio. And it's not just simply that every single student gets their own personal space, their own locker, their own, their own place to operate, make models, work on their digital computer models, right? But it's also a place where students can exchange their ideas, share with each other what they're trying to do, what they're communicating, and also make sure that everyone sees the work so they can ultimately get better. And on top of that, we also have facilities that allow for students to take those ideas and make them into some sort of physical reality. We have some of the best advanced fabrication facilities. We also have a shop, right? So you can actually not only make stuff, but you can also buy some material, so you don't have to lug 4x8 foot sheets of cardboard or wood into the subways, right? So you can actually have the ability to literally across the hall, buy the material and fabricate it. And of course, we have a leading edge digital computational facility so that we do an annual survey with industry to make sure that we have the cutting edge software so that all of you, when you're in the program, have the knowledge and the skill set to really do well upon entering the marketplace, right? And that brings me to number 2, which is essentially you. To have you as part of our program, that diversity is really important. Because if you're already listening to me talk right now, it tells us that you are interested in the program. It tells us that you're willing to go above and beyond. It tells us that you're not just going to do the bare minimum. And this is what these students are doing. These students are always exchanging ideas, always getting together. It's a tight-knit, and I believe the term that Sam was using earlier, she didn't say family, she family. And I'd like to think that when I talk about my students, I'm not going to say that I consider them my kids, but quite frankly, it's a family. They help each other out through the best and worst of times. They exchange ideas and they make things great. So to have you as part of this equation, to bring you into this, to get your diverse opinions, that would be great. Which brings me to my last point. The last point that makes our program so good is not just you, but also our entire student population. So at this point in time, I'd like to take a moment to allow my students here to do a lot more of the talking because they're more articulate than I am. Okay, so we'll start off by introducing all the students right now.
Hi everyone, I'm Teodora, and I'm a fourth year studying on the architecture concentration. And throughout my 4 years, I've really been involved in a lot of student groups. I've been part of ACU as the president my third year. I've also gotten a chance to go abroad for a conference, present at a conference in Spain. And I'm also currently working as the co-op liaison. So if you have any questions about the above, feel free to drop it in the Q&A.
Hi everyone, my name is Annette and I'm a fourth year student in the building science concentration. Last year on my co-op work term, I had the opportunity to spend 16 months in Vancouver working at a firm there. And after graduation, I plan to pursue my graduate studies before becoming a licensed architect and hopefully working on sustainable buildings.
Hi everyone, my name is Pranjal. I am a fourth year project management student. I've been part of several student groups during my time in undergrad, and I really enjoy this option of pursuing different options in the fourth year, and I'm looking forward to working and pursuing a career in project management.
Hi there, guys. My name is Caesar. I'm a third year student in architecture. What got me really interested in architecture is many family members are architects. I spent 2 years ago, a year in Argentina 6 months in Argentina studying with my uncle over the summer. And yeah, honestly, it's a great program. Any questions you have in terms of balancing work schedule and school, just shoot them my way.
Hi, my name is Medina. I'm a third year co-op student, currently working for Neuf Architects. It's a national architecture firm based in Montreal. I'm also an international student, so this program has been a great journey, exposing myself to different built environment and different culture. So if you have any questions regarding that, I'm happy to help.
Hi all, I'm Mariah and I graduated from the architectural science program back in 2017. While I was in the program, I did complete a studio abroad. I have presented at a conference in Spain. I worked for the co-op program as well as participated in some design builds. And while I did pursue the design option in my fourth year, I later went on to project management where I worked for a construction company for a few years. And now I've found my passion back at Ryerson, working in recruitment and client services.
Yeah, so now that you've got a sense, I'm going to leave this slide up because I know that some of you might have some questions about the program. I know that I gave a really condensed, I hope it wasn't too fast, but I gave a condensed picture on our program. And specifically, now that we have some students, you can hear me talk, right? And I certainly will answer some questions, but if any of you have questions for the students here, this would be a really great opportunity because quite frankly, I'm a prof. I talk all the time and I know how to get the answers out. You can ask real tough questions and real honest answers will come out from the students, okay? So please ask questions.
So I can start to feed some of these questions, Vince. And naturally, we have had many co-op questions. So can you again just go over who gets to participate in the co-op and whether co-ops are paid opportunities, and maybe the students can illuminate some light on that as well?
Absolutely, that's a really good question. So just pardon the shuffle because it's hilarious fun with Google Slides. Here we go here. Our co-op program is all based on paid opportunities, okay? Unlike other places, we will not concede our students working for free. I will not have any of our students work in dangerous situations. And I'm glad we have Medina and Annette, as well as Tio and Mariah, who can speak to the fact that we probably have some of the most engaged connections with industry, because it's not just simply having a staff member go, hey, file a report and tell us about co-op. We actually spend every term, we actually have a faculty member go to the firm and talk to the employer, see what's going on, talk to the student, make sure that everything's okay. And that happens every single term throughout the student's co-op, just to make sure that we're on top of it, to make sure that their learning is getting great, and to make sure that they're paid, to make sure all the conditions are good, okay? So the second part of that is, as you can see in the slide, our co-op program initiates upon finishing third year, okay? So what happens is that students will be taken in at the start of third year, and we look at their full CGPAs, cumulative grade point averages, okay? And basically, if you're among the top 40 students or thereabouts, we say, congratulations, you've been given a conditional offer to get into co-op. That doesn't necessarily mean you're in co-op, but then once you got that conditional offer, guess what? We're gonna make sure that you do workshops with me about everything from portfolio design, interview skills, professional acumen, all those really essential skills to help you get a job, right? And then basically over the course of that third year, you're doing not only regular school, but you're also working with me as a little bit of a side gig to make sure that your skill set is good and you're applying for jobs. And then basically, once you get a contract that says, we will agree to hire you for this many months and we will pay you this much, and these are the tasks that you'll be doing, congratulations, you're in co-op. And then you work in 4-month increments. And we've had students where they've worked 8 months in one place, 8 months in another place. We've had students work for 4 months as a research assistant and then 12 months at another firm, right? So this 4-month work term series is really robust. It's really great for for architecture students to really get a good sense of the industry, right? And it also allows for you as a student to really go, look, I wanted to work for a smaller firm here, and maybe I want to try out a larger firm there, right? And at the same time, it gives the employers a sense of kind of stability, where I can say, look, I know I have a student working here for a fixed period of time. I think one of the more frustrating things that you can imagine happening is that if you hire a student and they leave like 3 months into a work term, you really can't invest in them, and you can't really get a lot out of their ability to work into a project. Whereas with our co-op program, if a student were working 8 months, 12 months, 16 months with the same project, guess what? You can really say that that student's going to be taking on that initiative. And on top of that, you can also know that the student is going to have a real great sense of ownership and responsibility on those particular projects. I mean, I just talk a lot about co-op because that's my wheelhouse, but Annette, do you want to mention anything about it? Or Medina, since you're currently in co-op?
Yeah, I had a really good experience on co-op. So I was originally signed on to a firm for 8 months. It was Diamond Schmidt Architects in Vancouver. And because I was working on some projects that were extending past, as Vince said, architecture doesn't really have like a time period. So I really wanted to continue working on those projects, and luckily they want to have me too. So I was able to stay on for the rest of my work terms there. And by the end of the 16 months, I felt like I had a really good understanding of how a project grows over time in an office.
For me, I've been working for Neuf Architects for 12 months now. It's been a steep learning curve because I got to learn about different software on an advanced level. And also I got exposed to different projects of different scale. I worked on 5 projects so far. So all of them are have different program, residential, aircraft facility. So I got a variety of experience, which has been really helpful for me to decide what I prefer in the industry to work on and focus on in the future and in my future studies.
All right. Hopefully, Sam, that answers the question on co-op. You can come in.
Absolutely. And then I also see a question in the Q&A for folks who don't do the co-op, because again, it is competitive. We have someone curious of what type of hands-on opportunities students will get if they don't do the co-op. So, I mean, the whole program is quite hands-on, and I'm sure you folks can talk about that much better than I can. So can you further elaborate on just, if you don't do the co-op, what are those other experiential learning opportunities?
You know what? I could do a lot of talking, but that's not me. I will throw it first off to Mariah and Tio, because I think they both were not in co-op, but I think they got quite a lot of extracurricular and hands-on experiential learning opportunities.
Yeah, I can definitely start. So I didn't pursue the co-op, but instead, like I mentioned, I worked for Ryerson for my 3rd and 4th year, where I ended up getting super involved in many design builds. I actually ended up working on a research project with both Vincent Hui and another professor, Jennifer MacArthur. And we were working with like BIM technology, and we were creating models to represent some of it's. Sorry, I'm going a little bit, probably I'll start talking and you won't understand what I'm saying. Basically, we created a really awesome model on campus, which was displayed in the SLC later on. So we designed it, we built it, and it was then used by students for years to come. And like I mentioned as well in my intro, even though I didn't do co-op, I ended up getting a really great job with a construction company after graduation, where yeah, I worked as a project coordinator. I got involved in several, like so many different types of projects, ranging from pre-construction, obviously, into construction. So yeah, lots of great opportunities.
Yeah, and so I'm still in school, so I've got to experience a little bit of the non-co-op opportunities as well, and I'll definitely be experiencing more of that even after graduation. I know I mentioned that co-op is great because it helps you get a job after graduation super quickly because you already have that experience. But even without that, I was very keen throughout the school, and I got really well involved with student groups. And in terms of opportunities outside of co-op, I actually got to present in Spain at a conference, and that was through my involvement with Vince working on a research paper. And aside from that as well, there are so many networking opportunities for students, whether you're co-op or not co-op. You really get a chance to talk to a bunch of professionals in the field within Toronto and all of that. So even if you're not really in co-op, you get a great opportunity to talk to people that you can later on contact for a position in the field. Either before graduation, I actually got a chance to work in the summer at a firm, despite the pandemic and all the difficulty with that. And I'm definitely feeling optimistic about finding something else post-grad as well, despite not being in co-op.
Keep them coming.
Awesome. Speaking of COVID-19, we do have a question where a student an attendee is asking, how does studio work when classes are online? How do studios work? Are students expected to have materials at home, or what does kind of studio classes look like at a time during virtual learning?
I think we have some 4th years. So Pranjal, do you want to take it from there just with respect to the nature of classes?
So currently all of our classes are online. Professors have gotten a great handle on how to do classes online. They've made it interactive. They've made sure that the recordings are there for students to fall back on. So there's been a great adjustment that's happened since the pandemic has started. In terms of the studio, everything is online, but I know for a fact that students and professors alike are taking the initiative to make sure that the collaborative culture is still present and thriving. A lot of it is on your own initiative and the people that you meet. So it's about really engaging in the conversations that the professors are bringing up and asking the questions and just being excited to learn what you're doing and learn more about it, and also from your peers. So that's kind of how Studio is working on that aspect.
And I think, Gio, you've kind of dealt with 2 architecture studios during the pandemic, and I know that you've had the luxury of dealing with external reviewers and virtual tours. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so one thing that I've actually enjoyed about the pandemic, which is crazy to say, but what I've been really enjoying with the pandemic and studio specifically and the pandemic, and even other courses as well, is the ability to have external reviewers and actual guest lecturers that may not be from Toronto or from Canada at all. So we've had a chance to have external reviewers and also guest lecturers from abundance of places around the world, anywhere from Copenhagen, France, England, all of that, which typically you wouldn't really get to see for an in-person learning. So that's been really interesting and really engaging as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're doing okay, I think. I don't want to be tooting my own horn on this one, but I think we're doing okay, Sam. Okay.
I mean, it sounds great to me. But here's a great question, especially because we have representation from each of the different streams. So what are the primary differences between project management, architecture, and building science?
let's take it in order then. Project management, architecture, and building science. All right, Pranjal, you're up first.
Okay, so project management, it's about managing a project. It's very simple yet complex. So generally when a building is designed, it's about bringing it to life and the construction process and how does that work. So project management is not designing, it is actually working with a team of people, general contractors, subcontractors, and really working on how to bring this building to life. What does it mean in terms of scheduling, costing, and all of those other aspects. So it's not design, but it is a larger managing portion where you're working with a great deal of people, architects, engineers, contractors, and everyone else in the field.
Gio?
All right, yeah, so with architecture, it is focusing a lot more on the design. So one thing specifically with fourth year, looking at the architecture stream, is that throughout the years, we've actually really gotten a chance to do some designing in our studios. Both fourth year specifically, you have all that background knowledge from first, second, and third year, but now you're really applying it at a more deeper, detailed level. With the fourth year architecture stream, you're also approaching design from a more research-based, or at least I have in my studios. So you get to look more at the research of specifically the studio I'm working on is looking at health and nature and applying that to long-term care homes, for example. So we actually get the chance to research more into that and see how that can be applied to a design. Yeah.
And Annette, building science.
Right. So with building science, it's really about learning about how we build buildings and why we build them a certain way. So after your first 3 years of the regular stream of architecture, like the general stream, you have all this background knowledge about what architecture is and how we design. And building science is really about taking that design and putting it through things like energy modeling or simulation to prove that this is the best way that we can build this project and how we can really bring that into real life. And it's also a happy medium between like architecture and engineering in the sense that in the field, there's going to be lots of designers, but it's really important that we have a good understanding of how we can build buildings as well.
Yeah, I think it's just worth showing. So these are actual examples of work that was done by an architecture student from our program and an Indian co-op. And let me just put it out there. The three ladies described their particular concentrations, okay? However, you need to have the knowledge base of all of those concentrations to successfully deploy this project, right? Like, take a look at it. Tio, as an architect, or as a person in architecture concentration might say, this is my design for this kind of wavy ceiling made out of whatever, and it's gonna light up and everything. But then guess what? At some point, Annette's also gonna be working with her and say, how do you put the electric, how do you put the lights in there? What kind of fluorescent tubes do that? Or is it LED lighting? Or is that drywall? How does that happen? Or how do you get the amount of air exchanges in a restaurant so it doesn't get stinky? Even though you got this really cool roof, it might get stinky, right? So that's where Annette's going to come in. And of course, Pranjal, with her building science knowledge, with her project management, might say, okay, look, guys, that is going to cost us a certain bit more than the average type of ceiling on a building. The other thing is that, guess what? This restaurant's got to open up so that it's prime time summer season where everyone's busy. So how do we make sure that all of the contractors, how the suppliers are all in check? And better yet, how do we make sure it doesn't break the bank, right? Because if you just have a pretty picture, great, you're a great illustrator. I'm not sure if you're actually going to be a good architect, right? But if you understand that there's a design there, that there's some detail that's got to be refined, and then you also got to understand how that product's delivered, well, guess what? Congratulations, you are doing architecture, and better yet, that's definitely within the fold within architectural science. Keep them coming, Sam.
I think this is a great question because we have this slide up here right now. And the question is, do students' projects or designs get built in real life? If so, what does it take to make it happen? I would let the students speak to it, but that is all done by students, right? I think, Medina, were you part on this one?
For this one, I only volunteered for the construction part.
Okay, but can you describe what happened in the production of this? Because this was not done for school. This was actually cleared by the city of Toronto. This was done exclusively by our students on their own. So Medina, you want to describe that?
I can speak about the design process like briefly because I was not part of the design team, but I know a group of students, they came up with this idea, they had a concept, and then they worked on 3D models to make sure that, and they did mock-up models, like small scale models, to see how the structure would work. And then I volunteered to be a part of the construction team. And this was done, so the construction started in our architecture building, and then we actually moved the structure to the site, and then we continued on site. So that was the process of realizing this project from what I've seen.
Yeah, so just to put a nail on that one, our students have, as I said before, the number one reason why you want to be in our program is because of our students. And our students have the initiative to do these types of projects. No one's forcing them to do this. But let's be honest here. Those of you guys are listening and you say start working on an art project and you started, and then the next thing you know, you look at the clock, it's like 2 in the morning. Well, that's the kind of ambition, the drive that we want to have. Because that's what, this project that you see right here, this wasn't done because we paid them. This wasn't done because it was for grades. They did this because they wanted to see their designs come to reality. And there are multiple people here. Mariah, do you want to talk about the clothing box that you worked on?
Oh yeah, so yeah, we worked with a TRSM student, so another student in another faculty, on this clothing donation box that they wanted to build. So he came to us with an idea, what he wanted to do. We came up with different iterations, different designs. We worked on the whole design process with the client, I guess, or with the student or the client at that point. And yeah, we ended up building it, and they used it for their purposes to collect clothing later on that year.
Yeah, so no matter what, you'll find that students don't just simply make pretty pictures. I think that's one thing that we got to be very clear about. In our program, without that building science and without that project management capacity, right, to be able to understand how these things come together and to make sure that the logistics are all in check, you're just making a picture, right? So we understand that that's the reality of the industry.
Another question for the students. We have someone inquiring whether any of the students lived on campus. Do they find it easier with this program to be living close to campus, or how is that commuting and being in such a rigorous program? What is that experience like? So maybe if our students can share.
Did any of you guys live in Res or nearby campus?
I didn't live in Res, but I did get to experience living on near campus, but also got to experience living at home and off campus. So I got to experience the best of both worlds, sort of. I definitely see the benefits of living on campus. It was definitely not a necessary thing, but it definitely did help just to be really close to campus. I lived right by campus my third year, which is seen as the most intensive year. That year I was also ACU Pres and working at Ryerson. So I kind of took the decision because this is a very intensive program and third year is more intensive, and I was also doing extra things on the side. So living on campus or close to campus was definitely very beneficial. I got a bit more sleep than I probably would have if I lived at home. But living at home worked really well as well. There's a lot of facilities at the school, places to work, places to rest, places to grab food and all that stuff. Even though I wasn't, living on campus in my first 2 years, I still spent most of my time in studio and at school anyways. So for me, really being at home was more of just, that's where I sleep. And then I'll just commute to TTC for about an hour and 20 minutes. Which did take time out of my day, but I would often use that time to do my readings or to, just catch up on some work or even just, relax and listen to some music. So there are definitely benefits for both, and I experienced both of those. So yeah.
Awesome. Vince, you might want to answer this one. So Ryerson's degree is a Bachelor of Architectural Science, while similar programs in other universities are Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Architectural Studies. Is there a difference in terms of the program content, or is just a naming convention? So without saying anything about our colleagues from the other institutions who we love, can you talk about the difference, I guess, with a degree in architectural science?
And you always got to give me trick questions. Okay. So the right answer is the Bachelor's of Architectural Science is a pre-professional undergraduate degree that allows you to go and undertake the, let me just fast forward to the slide here. It allows you to take this type of model, right? So if you have at the top left-hand corner, if you have an architectural science degree, an architectural studies degree, right? As long as it says a Bachelor's of Architectural Studies or Science, right? Then you're good to go. Then you can then parlay it to take any of the 2-year masters, okay? Other programs, they might just simply offer a Bachelor's of Arts. And you know what? That's great. If you don't know exactly what type of discipline or focus you want to have, absolutely, they offer a great diversity of backgrounds, right? But let me just break it down a little bit. So we don't offer a Bachelor's of Arts. We offer a Bachelor's of Architectural Science. So other places that have Bachelor's of Arts, that's not even an architecture degree. So that's not even, I'm not going to talk anything good or bad. I'm just going to say that's not an architectural degree. So when it comes to the architectural science versus architectural studies degree, well, again, as Annette can probably tell you, we deal with the understanding of not only the design, but also the detailing and delivery. There is, believe it or not, there is a science to making sure that buildings don't necessarily just fall apart, right, that stay up, but to make sure that buildings are able to perform better, so that heat, air, moisture, that doesn't fall apart. That doesn't really contribute to the detriment to the building. And the second part, of course, is that it's a science to make sure you're able to keep cost controls down, to be able to figure out if I reduce this type of material usage in my building, guess what? I'm going to save money over the long term, operational costs, right? So there's a real science, even though it sounds like it's a lot of finance and stuff and math, it's actually science. So our program isn't just simply studying architecture, because we do that all the time. I dare any of you to ask any of my students whether or not they studied architecture at all. They studied it. But they also know that there's a science to it. And if you can't quantify and be objective and say that this is how you get stuff done, but instead just, rhetorically ask questions about architecture, well, guess what? You should go into architectural studies. We are talking about bringing your ideas in architecture that you've studied and actually applying that science to it so we can actually make sure that you can bring that building to some level of reality. That's what differentiates our program from others. And I just open to the students to chime in on that.
I would just like to clarify that our program is accredited, and that goes a long way on if you actually want to pursue licensure and be an architect. So as you can see from this diagram, we have 4 years of our undergrad and then 2 years of a MArch, so Masters of Architecture. And this can be at Ryerson. Once again, we have a great MArch program, or at other universities. But what makes a huge difference about that accreditation is that if it is not an accredited undergrad degree, you will generally have to spend a lot more time in your master's program. So that is a huge distinction to make, and kind of think far ahead. Like, if this is something you want to pursue, if licensure is your goal, eventually to some extent, maybe it would be in your benefit just from a time perspective to kind of take an accredited undergrad.
Not to mention, of course, the fact that you would have been doing architecture for 6 solid years, as opposed to, say, doing a bachelor's in French or arts, a bachelor's of arts, and then doing a 3.5, 4-year master's. I'd like to think that most of you who want to be licensed architects probably want to get the most architecture education and designing things as you can.
Awesome. We are getting close to time, so I kind of want to hammer through a couple more because we do have some more questions coming through.
Okay, guys.
We have 2 questions that are along similar lines, and they are about kind of the after process. So one of them is, architecture is one of the oldest and most saturated fields, as in there isn't active demand for it comparatively to other programs. How are students managing to thrive in what they decide to do in the workforce after graduation? And then the other question that's along the similar lines is, what percentage of students after undergrad and masters go on to work in the field? So how do our graduates do in the field, essentially, and how are they getting jobs?
So to answer that question, I just preface it with, in a nutshell, they're doing great. Even during the pandemic, when every other industry was shutting down, we only had a couple of students kind of have to cut their work terms short, but they were able to still get all of their co-op done. Okay. We know that a lot of our grads are able to get jobs well within the first year of graduation, if not the first few months. A lot of them take that little time off to celebrate, right? So we know that our students are fairly good at getting jobs. I would say it's very high. I remember one year back in the old days, because of our faculty connections to the local GTA architecture industry, just under my watch, I know that about 70% of the graduating class at least had architecture-related jobs because of what I was connecting them with. The second thing is we also know that students in studying architecture don't just simply go into architecture, they also go into various other disciplines. I have some of my students working with video games to say set design, all the way through to retail design, to of course like just contractors, right? So that's a great opportunity. So I would say that the statement about a saturated marketplace. Yeah, I'd say that like basically if we're getting 1,200, 1,400 applicants any given year for 115, 120 spots, I'd say it's a pretty saturated competitive landscape. But when it comes to the demand, unless you're just one of those architecture people who studied architecture who didn't really know architecture and you can't find a job, I'd like to think that my students, they actually know all the stuff that it takes to go into putting together a building and basically the keys to success in the industry. Students, do you want to chime in on this one? Oh, I just dropped the mic on that one.
It sounds like you dropped the mic. I don't know. Students,
I can go ahead. I don't know. I was just answering some of the Q&As. But yeah, I mean, again, like as I said, I'm not a co-op student, but despite that, I've still been able to, land a position within the field, especially within Toronto. It's such a vibrant architecture industry and community that, you'll hear this while you're in school as well, but it's a very small community, so everyone knows everybody. So you'll very kind of quickly, easily get connections. You kind of, you want to put your best foot forward since, everybody knows everybody. But it is something that's, despite maybe, I guess, in your view, it's like it's not really as needed as other industries maybe are right now. It's still very much, there's a need for architects. There's still a need for this industry, and it's still very vibrant and moving forward very quickly at a fast pace.
I can add in as a graduate and having many friends and friends in the program who graduated with me. Every single one of my friends is either doing their master's or has a job in the field. It's definitely very busy right now. I feel like everyone is designing and in COVID, every single one of my friends is very well employed, for working for different firms ranging from residential into the commercial sector.
Now, I do want to address some of the folks who are prospective potential applicants to the program. So we have had a couple of questions like, is a portfolio required for first year applications? I can say yes, a portfolio is required, but what makes a good portfolio and what are you looking for in a portfolio?
Oh my goodness, it's like I wrote a book on this. I would say that there's at least three things. I'm not going to say I want a bowl of fruit, I want hands, and I want like a landscape painting. That's silly. If you go to any other program that's as prescriptive as that, I think you're not doing it right. Three things you should show. First off, really have good skills, right? Like basically, if you say that you draw with pencils or pens, guess what? I should see that in the sketches, right? I mean, if you say this is a cow and I say, no, that looks like a face, right? Something's wrong, right? So that ability to communicate with strong skill is really important, okay? The second thing is obviously you might really be able to do a great knockoff of the Mona Lisa, right? Or Picasso, but guess what? You're just a human photocopier. I need you to have some design capacity to really show, let's be honest here, architects are creating things that don't exist yet. So that's what we need to have. We need you to have that design ability to then also take that visualization ability to communicate that properly. And the third component in your portfolio, beyond simply design, beyond simply the technical skills or that kind of visualization skill, the third one is a little bit hard to pinpoint, but I'd say it's passion. Because listen, you talk to any of these students here, I dare you to say that they looked at their watch and said, oh, it's 5 o'clock, I'm done, I'm gonna go home now. They all really care about their work. They all are invested. And if you have a real passion for this, and if you can find a way to showcase in your portfolio that you're not just simply doing high school projects, that you're actually doing more and above beyond everything that's required, then guess what? I want you in this program. And quite frankly, you talk to these students right here, they'll tell you that those are critical key success factors in this particular line of education.
Amazing. I'm going to ask one more question and then I think we will be at time. And this question is just regarding studio time. So how much time do you spend working in a studio per week traditionally?
I'll preface it with, I'll let the students talk on this one, but studio, just to make sure everyone understands, a typical course is 3 hours. A studio in our program is 9 hours. So every week you spend 9 hours hanging out with the prof, and it's a 15 or 16 to 1 ratio. So instead of like what you might think of like 1,000 students to 1 prof, no, it's me sitting down with you and about 15 or odd students, and we talk about your design. So you're guaranteed to have me talk about your design, criticize, and offer some feedback, right? And that is huge, right? But that's just the school time. So I'll throw it back to the students now. So it's 9 hours of studio time. Ladies, and maybe Cesar, you want to chime in on the time involved?
All the time available to you is studio time. Anytime that, like, honestly, everything that we do within the program comes back to studio. Any knowledge that you take from every single part of this program, whether it be your structures class, whether it be your sound class, it could be any aspect of it. It all goes back into the design in studio, and this is where you get the one-on-one conversations going with your professors, and you're able to get that feedback. Honestly, anytime you have available studio is, and honestly, if you're not doing that, I don't understand why you would even consider this program, because it's such a great aspect of this program to be able to design and create something. So anytime that you have available studio time, but yeah, you'll experience it if you do manage to enter our program, that it is kind of like your life, but architecture will become your life eventually. So look into that.
I also wanted to add, in case anyone gets scared by that, there are also students who do manage to do, other things. I was not one of them, but yeah, as Cesar said, your time really is dedicated to studio. It's not just about the time you spend in class and the 9 hours that you are in studio, because those hours fly by, but it's all about the time you spend in studio outside of class. So the studios are open to students, when we're in person, 24/7. So you have access to your studio with your student card at any time of the day or night. And it's really encouraged to work in studio if you have the ability to, because it makes everything a lot more fun. You can bounce ideas off one another. That's really how, everyone in the program is really close. It's a really close-knit community because we do spend a lot of our time in the building and within the program. But at the same time, there are definitely students that you can talk to who, have managed to do things outside of their studio, who have done, sports, intramurals, students are still kind of keeping healthy and, going to the gym, that kind of stuff. So it's really just about, balancing your time. And I think one aspect of that is really the close-knit connection all the students have together, because we are so close-knit, you can kind of just, walk over to a friend from, across the studio and be like, hey, I'm going to go grab some food. You want to come with me? There's metro across the street. Let's go grab some food. Or I'm going to go to a gym in about half an hour. You want to join me? So it's really just a really close-knit community, and you really spend a lot of your time in that studio and doing studio. And that's kind of why you'll hear studio being thrown around a lot.
All right.
And I'm doing this in the best way possible. It's just to make sure that you guys are excited for this. Like, this isn't a boring thing. Studio is where architecture is born, I think. So don't take that as a bad thing. You're going to, you have Starbucks across the street if you really need it. It's a really, really great place to be. So you're going to enjoy it once you do decide.
Yeah, we all miss it right now.
Yeah, we miss it so much.
Amazing. Yeah, I will say the program definitely rigorous, as you're hearing from these students, but very rewarding. You get to do some really exciting things. The networking opportunities are endless. And we also do really want you to have a life, and you're going to become really great friends with the folks in your program. You do have the opportunity to do things like intramurals and, things outside of the studio. I did see a question whether the studio is paid, and it's part of your tuition. Like, you're working in this amazing building, you are going into the studio, only architectural science students have access to this building. So you really do get to make that space your home with your fellow classmates and your fellow family members, essentially. So yeah, it's not an additional fee, it's just part of your overall tuition. So I just wanted to clarify that. Any last words, Vincent, before we sign off?
Well, I just hope this was informative for all of you listening. I know parents are listening, so hopefully we made a couple of things very clear to you. Certainly applicants, I hope that also clears a few things. I also want to say thank you to Sam, you and your team, and certainly June Komisar, my colleague. She's in the back typing away madly, answering a lot of questions, and certainly, there we go. Hey, June, say hi. Say hi to the people.
Hi, everyone. I'm the Associate Chair for Student Affairs, and I'm back here answering questions as fast as I can. Bye.
Yeah. So we've got June in the back, but also the students taking the time out of their busy schedules because they got school and they also got, some of them are working. So I do appreciate Jess and Sam, your team, but also all the students here. Thank you very much for taking time out to help out on this.
Amazing. Yeah. And hey, we appreciate you. We appreciate all of the folks working the back end, and we appreciate all of our attendees for taking some time out of their day to learn a little bit more about whether our program is the best fit for you. And we hope it is, and we hope to see you as part of our Ryerson community in the future. So again, our session is overtime now, so we will be shutting off our cameras and our video and our microphones. You won't be able to see us, but we will answer those final questions before we wrap this thing up. And I encourage you to take note if you ask any questions and you got an answer, just take a note of that. We do have tons of additional ways to communicate and connect with us. The greatest area to do this is check out our Ryerson at Home website, ryerson.ca/at-home. And that's where you can learn about taking a guided virtual campus tour. If you want to meet a student recruitment officer like Caesar, if you'd like to book a meeting with someone like myself, all that information on the Ryerson at Home website. Be sure to also continue checking into your Choose Ryerson portal page, because again, that will be where you hear back on a decision regarding your application. As well, it might be great to check out the After Applying section and the new Approved Students pages, because there's some really great information on those websites as well. Should you have any questions, we are always available to help. You can get in touch with us through our Service Hub. So Mariah over in the Service Hub can help you out. And the Service Hub is accessible through email, phone, social media, live chats, or by using ask.ryerson.ca. Once this webinar ends, you also will be prompted to submit a survey, so we'd love it if you filled it out. Your feedback is so valuable to us, and it helps us dictate our future programming, so we would really appreciate that. On behalf of Ryerson University, thank you so much for joining us today. Hope to see you at some of our future virtual open house sessions. Take care, everyone.